Today we'll be recapping the Manhwa romance fantasy comic binge. Please like the video and subscribe if you enjoy, as it really helps the channel. Now, let's get stuck in. Meet Kim Young-hee, a 19-year-old high schooler whose life comes to a tragic end when she is hit by a truck on the way home from school. Well, that got dark quick. Fortunately for Young-hee, it wasn't the end. When she opened her eyes, she woke up as the main character in the novel she had been reading, a girl named Marianne. And that really is fortunate. If her second life goes the same way as the plot, Marianne will one day become the empress. Of course, there's a lot of political tension and backstabbing involved in running a country. And what the heck does a 19-year-old know about economics? So Young-hee decides early on to forfeit Marianne's destiny and give up the position to the novel's villainess. That way, she gets paid off and can run away to live a nice cushy life somewhere in the countryside. Sounds pretty good, right? Except that the villainess in question has also been reborn. A 28-year-old cancer victim named Park Ji-yoon was reading the same novel when she passed away and woke up in the body of Evelyn, the villain. And she doesn't want to die either. Plus, she went from a cancer-ridden body to a healthy young one. She doesn't want to make enemies. She wants to travel the world. So Jiyeon/Evelyn also disappears from the plot, intending to live her life for her own sake. And would you believe it? There is yet another person who gets reborn into this world. Chul-soo is an ordinary college student who was killed when his ceiling collapsed after an earthquake. What a way to go. He was secretly reading the novel using his sister's account, and was reborn as the first prince and romantic lead. Not bad, eh? Of course, being the first prince means there must be a second, and that means Chul-soo could face the constant threat of being assassinated. So, of course, he decided to disappear too. A few months later, Marianne has escaped to a neighboring country and is working as a maid in a small aristocratic house. While out running errands, she hears someone uttering a familiar curse word that doesn't exist in this world, and suddenly stops in her tracks. She turns around to find the first prince and starts singing a famous song from an advert for shrimp chips. When Chul-soo finishes the melody, she knows he has also been reincarnated. Although it looks like he has fared a lot worse than Marianne. For one thing, he can't remember his character's name. He also doesn't want to give away the fact that he's in line to the throne, since that would put him in danger. So he introduces himself as Brad, since he saw someone passing by eating bread. Not the most creative, is he? Marianne/Young-hee also doesn't want to give away her character, so she introduces herself as Lily and offers him a job at the aristocrat's mansion. She takes him back right away, introducing him to the owner, who is none other than, you guessed it, Evelyn, the villainous turned runaway and the third member of the reincarnated trio. Evelyn, who now goes by Eve, told her father she wanted to travel the world, but only got as far as the neighboring country. Since the Empire has a truce with them, she figured she'd be safe. But just in case, she wants to use a fake name, something that her butler, Miller Quasar, seems highly suspicious of. While introducing Brad to the manor, Lily explains that the lady of the house is rather unambitious. She has lots of money and a huge home, but she rarely hires people to work and doesn't really do anything with her fortune. The workers are very short-staffed, so they're all very keen for him to get hired. Even Miller has a quiet word with the lady to encourage her to accept the incoming candidate. While waiting in a gorgeous, elegant sitting room, Brad tries to imagine what he could possibly be tested on. Lily said the interview would judge his abilities, but as a college-age student, he doesn't have a whole lot of those. His character is the best swordsman in the Empire, but I guess that's useless if the guy in the body has never picked up a blade. Miller comes out and introduces herself and warns him that the test will be judged blind. Like, literally blind. As in, put a blindfold on and lead him by the hand blind. Kind of a weird setup for a job interview, but okay. Once he's alone with the lady of the manor, Brad does his best to appear polite and to present himself as a strong candidate. But Eve shuts him up almost immediately. Clearly, the only thing she's judging him on is his physique. Lucky for Brad, he passes, and Evelyn hires him right away. Could we get some HR down here or something? This seems like a pretty unethical hiring process to me. Eve takes off his blindfold, although she herself is wearing a mask. I guess she's pretty serious about hiding her identity, even to her own staff. Eve asks him to start working first thing tomorrow, so Lily comes to take him to his room. She reveals that the only person who has ever seen the lady's real face is Miller. No one else knows why she's so secretive. Just before they go to his room, Lily comes out with something she's been wanting to say since she met him in the street. "Brad, you smell." Ouch! Well, living unemployed on the streets will do that to you, I guess. Lily tries to take off his shirt, seeing nothing weird about stripping a stranger down in the middle of the hallway. Obviously, Brad is a little taken aback. But once he's bathing in his own private... Whoa! Hang on a second! Did everyone else just see that? Now I can believe he is the best swordsman in the Empire. Look at those abs! Anyway, after getting hot, steamy, and hopefully a little less stinky, Brad changes into the clothes prepared for him by Lily, which are, well, they're a little tight. Apparently, that's the biggest size they have, but on Brad's broad chest, they look like kids' clothes. Anyone else starting to see why Eve picked him so quickly? Lily takes him to his room, where Brad thanks her for the opportunity and for helping him get off the streets. She tells him not to mention it. After all, as far as they know, they're the only two reincarnated people in this whole world. They've got to look out for one another. Lily, in particular, is happy to have a comrade, someone she can confide in. It makes her life in this fantasy novel almost perfect. Almost. The only problem she has is this small thing that happens once a month. Girls, I think we can guess what she's talking about here. After waking up grumpy, she spots Brad going for an early morning run outside. She comes down to say hello and to ask what the heck he's doing. It turns out Mr. Broadshoulders was a physical education student in his past life, which is no surprise to anyone, so he's in the habit of taking early morning runs. She can't talk long because the cramps have started to strike. In her past life, Young-hee didn't really get period pains, but apparently Marianne, future empress of a fantasy world, has incredible cramps far worse than regular people. And in a world without painkillers? Oof, I do not envy her. It's for this reason, and this reason alone, that Young-hee/Lily is not happy settling in this kingdom. She's determined to go back to her own world through whatever means. Maybe some kind of magician could help her? But before she can do anything, she needs to save money. Or find a way to make more, which is harder than you'd think. I mean, what normal high schooler from our world knows how to set up a business or invent a new product and market it to medieval commoners? I think I'd be screwed. While she's plotting how to take out a loan in a romantic fantasy novel, Lily is interrupted by another of the maids, named Michelle. The two are pretty close, considering they've been working together for a few months now. She came to check in, since Lily didn't appear for their morning meeting because, well, you know, her uterus is tearing itself apart. Michelle watches another cramp attack her system and immediately understands what's going on. Clearly, she isn't fit for work today, so she asks Michelle to let Miller know she won't be on hand. She also asks her friend if she knows anyone who might loan her some money. But apparently that's illegal in this world. Something about religion? Kind of sounds a bit suspicious to me, but that just means Lily has no choice but to start a business now. Thinking of making Brad a partner, she asks Michelle where he's been put to work. Of course, the first place he was sent was out in the grounds to chop wood. It's almost too perfect. She explains her plans to him and asks if he might have any idea what kind of product they could sell to the people of this world. After he admitted he was a physical education student, I'm not sure what she's really expecting him to bring to the table. Brad doesn't have any more ideas than she does, but he did make her a kind of makeshift hot water bottle to help with her period pains. What a gentleman! Before she leaves, Lily asks her new friend if he's happy staying in this world. Brad doesn't seem to mind being here too much, but more than that, he points out that neither of them know if they even have bodies to return to. Which is a very good point. I mean, what can a wizard even do if their real selves are dead? I feel like turning back time might be a little over budget. Brad especially has very strong memories of his last moments. Not only is he sure he doesn't have a body anymore, but he also doesn't have a home. His ceiling caved in, remember? So from his perspective, it's much better to stay and make a life here. After he's done chopping wood, Brad is sent to the general store where he overhears a knight asking around about a wanted man. The description is exactly the same. Tall, dark hair, handsome with a good physique. Brad starts freaking out. Since this country isn't in the Empire, he thought they would keep the disappearance of the first prince a secret. But it seems the search has made its way to him in the end. To his horror, the knight approaches Brad with the wanted poster, revealing a face that could not be more different than his own. What's more, the knight admits that the person he is after is an escaped prince, not the first knight of the Empire. So he's safe for now. Well, nearly safe. As he was about to leave, the knight takes a good look at Brad's face, asking if they've met before. He manages to convince him that they haven't, and soon the knight is on his way. But there are even more knights out on the street looking for the escaped prisoner. The whole interaction is a painful reminder that he can't quite rest easy while he remains in this world. As soon as he gets back to the mansion, he runs straight to Lily to say he's in. He can't handle the pressure of a lifetime in hiding, so they might as well go back to the world they know. It must be doubly scary for Brad, since anyone who has ever seen the Crown Prince will recognize him, but he has no idea who to avoid since he's only just inherited this body. With all that on his shoulders, Brad seems set on returning to reality with Lily. He barges into her room, guns blazing, to find her doing anti-cramp exercises on the floor. She's surprised that he's already changed his mind, so he makes up an excuse about being scared of catching diseases, because of the lack of modern medicine and all that. Kind of a weird one to hit you 2 months in, Bradster. It seems even weirder when Lily tells him that most diseases can be cured at the shrine via magic, or whatever religion has prohibited lending money. So instead, he says it's the internet. He doesn't want to live without the internet. That's why he wants to go back. That one sticks, but now they're just a pair of dreamers with no money. They go and grab something to eat from the kitchens and continue to brainstorm their money-making product. Since Brad was a physical education student, all he can come up with is gym-related stuff, which isn't exactly marketable in a world where most people are moving about all the time. Like, imagine trying to sell a dumbbell to a medieval farmer. Brad starts to get frustrated with her shooting down all of his ideas, and asks what Lily has come up with. But in fairness, she was a high school senior when she died. When would she have had the time to learn business beside her final exams? But despite that, Lily does come up with one good idea. They should make food. After all, they came from Korea. How popular could Korean fried chicken or spicy rice cakes be in a world where they don't already exist? The only problem is, they're not familiar with the ingredients in this world and are missing some pretty crucial ones from ours. The only thing they could really make is fried chicken, but since no one in this world seems to know how to fry food, it might be a hit. They get started right away. Since Lily is still plagued by cramps, she orders Brad step by step on how to cut up a chicken. But since he's such a big baby, he finds the texture uncomfortable to touch. How could a gym bro never have made chicken from scratch before? Oh well, looks like this is going to be a Lily job. They will just have to wait until she's feeling better to get started. 2 days later, they gather in the kitchen again for round 2. Lily is going to have to handle the chicken since Brad is such a big baby, so she gives him the job of lighting the fire instead. Considering they're 2 pretty young people from a modern world where everything is done for them, they do a pretty good job of making the marinade and prepping the meat. Sweet little golden retriever Brad has put his all into making the fire. So much that it's almost dangerously hot. You can say what you want about this kid, but give him a task and he really will go nuts. While he's fanning the flames like his life depends on it, Lily makes the point that too much heat will burn the chicken. He needs to take some of the firewood out if they want any chance at making a decent meal, not to mention getting out of there alive. Once the fire has calmed down a bit and the oil is heated, they make their first attempt at frying. The first thing Lily notices is that it's not making any of the sizzling sounds you'd expect from fried chicken. So that means it's Brad's turn again to get the flames burning hotter. Poor kid. Hotter, cooler, fan it less, fan it more. If he wasn't such a loyal worker, he'd probably be pretty mad right about now. Lily takes out the first batch, but decides to fry them again since apparently that makes them even more crispy. She must have really liked fried chicken in her past life to know this much about the cooking process as a teenager. The first batch looked great, way better than either of them expected. Unfortunately, the flavor is a little lacking, but then that's because they're used to professional finger-licking food from our world. Maybe someone from this world would think it was amazing? And here to test that theory is Michelle, who tries it and hates it. Well, just goes to show that following a recipe isn't quite enough. Part of the problem is that the chicken is still soaked in oil, so it's all greasy. The heat is the main culprit there. The flame was difficult to control, so the cooking was all uneven. In the future, they'll have to keep the temperature steady, which reminds Brad of one of his special abilities as the first prince of the Empire. Supposedly, the prince could control fire, but since Brad has never tried it, he has no idea how to conjure it. Late in the night, he wanders into the woods to practice, and after a whole lot of trial and error, he manages to conjure a flame. Whoa! That's pretty impressive for a first try. The only problem is that his fire is quite unstable. It's going to take a lot more practice until he learns how to control it. I can't believe they're doing all of this for fried chicken. People who think with their stomachs are really determined. The main thing he's learned so far is that it comes out the strongest when he's a little flustered. It must be in some way linked to his emotions in that case. For once, the athlete will have to learn to train his mind instead of his body. He tries to imagine it like a video where he clicks a button and the fire just comes out. And what do you know? It works! A little too well, actually, since the flames start spurting from his hand like a laser. It shot over into the bushes behind him and starts to burn the forest. Brad immediately panics since there's no water around. The only thing he can do is use his clothes and body to smother the fire. I mean, he looks a mess, but he's otherwise unhurt. So it kind of worked. He's still got a long way to go if he wants to be the best fried chicken chef in the land. The next morning, the mansion staff get a surprise delivery, and you'll never guess what's inside. A freezer. That's right. Somehow, Lady Evelyn has managed to get her hands on a fantasy freezer, and she plans to use it exclusively for beer. Realizing that this world might be more advanced than he thought, Brad heads over to a tool shop in town looking for something that could control fire. And shockingly, they have exactly what he's looking for. Someone has made a magical version of a gas burner that allows the user to control the temperature while cooking. Perfect! The only problem is, it costs 2 million gold. Not the kind of money that someone who was recently homeless has in their pockets. Actually, the reason it's so expensive is because of the mana stored inside the gem at the center. These days, it's very rare for a person to be able to conjure mana and use magic, so getting hold of a charged mana stone is very tricky. Lucky for Brad, he is one of those rare few. The shopkeeper just so happens to have another one of the magical burners without the mana, and is willing to give it away for just 10 gold. Brad buys it immediately, without realizing what he's just signed up to. Basically, the tool will only activate once mana is inserted into it. It's like buying a burner without the gas, or a lamp without a light bulb. The shopkeeper offers him a little more information about mana holders, but Brad declines. After all, he's basically a walking torch. I'm sure he can figure it out. Right? That afternoon, he finds a quiet spot in the woods and sits down with his new toy, trying to figure out how to channel his power into the mana stone. Actually, it's not that complicated, but it does take a few tries to fill it up completely, after which he is totally wiped. But the burner works perfectly, maybe even better than the kind he would have had in reality. Proud of his work, Brad the Golden Retriever runs straight to Lily to show her what he did. They test it right away, placing the burner beneath a large cauldron of oil and using the same recipe as last time. This time, the chicken turns out great, but they can't be sure until the official tester, Miss Michelle, has had a bite. She's pretty suspicious after the first one, so she makes some excuse about having to do the laundry and calls another staff member named Hans to take her place. But the rumors of their fried chicken being gross have spread so far that even Hans refuses to eat it. Even when they insist that it tastes better, the idea of chicken soaked in oil just doesn't sound appealing to people in this world. Undeterred, Lily and Brad decide to just give it a shot and head to the market to sell their new and improved fried chicken. They get the same reaction out there. Not only does the idea of fried food not make sense to them, but offering it for free makes people even more suspicious. Damn, how are they going to get people to buy it if they won't even try it? After a while, they run into the tool shop owner while he's out wandering through town. He's very friendly and insists they call him Carlos. He spots the burner working in the background and seems very surprised. As far as he knows, there isn't a mana user in the village. He asks where they got the mana to make the burner working, and as usual, Brad just acts kind of flustered. He really is a terrible liar. Quickly changing the conversation, he offers Carlos a piece of fried chicken that he takes without any hesitation. A nearby market vendor is shocked that he would just start eating something without even knowing what it is, and rushes over to stop him. Carlos is about to say it's fine when suddenly he freezes up and drops the chicken. But not because it's bad, because it's delicious. He's so stunned that for a moment, he just raves about how juicy and crunchy it is, conveniently advertising their product to the entire market. Oof, for a second, I thought it was about to go bad. Carlos asks to buy another piece right away, acting so enthusiastic that the watching vendor is also tempted. But these merchants are a suspicious bunch. As he's reaching for a piece, an older, more senior vendor cautions him not to take the risk. What is with these people? The older lady thinks Carlos was paid to eat it and to talk loudly about how much he enjoyed it, so that it would encourage other people. Which, I guess, makes sense. It was weird how quickly he trusted this food he had literally never seen before. The vendor changes his mind, and now it seems like the crispy chicken duo are back to square one. After a whole afternoon at the market, they only manage to sell one piece. Now they have a load of fried chicken left over and nothing to do but eat it. Lily is wondering what to do next when her brainstorming session is interrupted by Brad chowing down on their stock. Like, seriously, he's slurping and gulping and licking, and it's kind of gross, honestly. But for some reason, it gives Lily an idea. She asks for directions to the magic tool shop and then sprints out the door. What she wants from Carlos is a sound amplifier, what we would know as a microphone. It turns out her genius plan is to have Brad do an ASMR mukbang. Seems like a hard sell if you ask me. I know he made the chicken look delicious, but I don't think ASMR is exactly universal. Won't that just weird people out? Carlos does in fact have a sound amplifier, but he's only willing to sell it at 1.5 million gold. That would be enough to put most people off, but not Lily. Determined as ever, she asks if she can pay in installments, and Carlos agrees, but only up to 6 months. Any longer than that, and she could just run off without paying. That's still way out of her budget, so Lily proposes another idea. She asks if she can rent it instead, taking it for a short while and paying him back in fried chicken. That gets Carlos on board immediately. Apparently, after just one piece, he is now the world's biggest fried chicken fan. The next day, they set up their stall again, this time with the plan of advertising via mukbang. The other vendors have gathered to watch, once again deeply suspicious of their product and also their dedication. Unfortunately, they're taking it further than just suspicion. The market veteran has gone so far as to gather a whole crowd of people, and she orders them not to take a single bite of the chicken no matter what happens. Hey lady, don't you have your own stall to run? Why do you need to spend so much time dragging someone else down? These merchants really are shady. Unaware of their scheme, Brad and Lily are preparing for their demonstration. Brad did agree to the mukbang the night before, but now he's having doubts. And can you blame him? I wouldn't want to go out in front of a crowd of strangers and start making slurping noises in a microphone. Lily hypes him up, telling him that he has a natural-born gift for making things sound delicious. And if he can't believe in himself, he should believe in her, which is a pretty self-centered way of saying get on with it, but somehow it works. Brad sits down and Lily tests the mic, announcing their incoming mukbang to the market-goers. She places the microphone next to Brad and he starts chomping. He's nervous at first, but soon his love for the chicken takes over and he's performing like a professional YouTuber. Clearly, their recipe is getting better because Brad starts having a bit of a moment with the chicken. He's so totally absorbed in the food that the crowd quickly becomes obsessed. A few people are tempted, but the old lady forces them away. She can't stop everyone though, and soon one lady gets through and asks to try a piece. Finally, they made their breakthrough. The girl thinks it's delicious and spreads the word among the other villagers. She even comes back for more, asking about the cooking methods and wanting to buy another piece. Yes! Lily's idea paid off after all. People are soon falling over each other to get their hands on the fried chicken. And after hearing how cheap it is, some even say they'll come back every day. That's the way, guys. You'll be rich enough to go home in no time. Lily thanks Brad for his gross little talent and tells him they should continue the mukbang show for as long as possible. So for the next few days, Brad puts on a show for the whole market, and the fried chicken business begins to boom. But Lily isn't satisfied, of course. The next step is to open up a shop. That's the only way they can improve their product and guarantee a regular income. Obviously, they don't have enough money yet to buy a whole shop, but they do have enough to rent one. As soon as their next day off comes around, the two go off to sign contracts. It's all moving pretty fast, but they aren't intimidated by their sudden success. If anything, it seems to have inspired them to work even harder. But once everything is set up in their new space, reality starts to sink in. So far, they've done pretty well for a college and a high school student, but finances are no joke when you're running a business. Lily runs the numbers and discovers that considering rent, ingredients, and all their new supplies, they're going to have to raise the price of the chicken if they want to make any profit at all, which is kind of the point since they're trying to save up so they can go home. In order to cover all the costs, they need to increase the price by 5 times the original. It's pretty steep, but maybe their loyal fan base will stay with them despite the costs? To manage their image, they decide to warn their customers that the price will be increasing from next month. But of course, this just makes everyone buy as much as they can until the price increase, which isn't such a bad thing. People fell in love with fried chicken so much that they continue to make a profit despite the price increase. While working so hard with their business, Lily starts struggling to keep up with her normal job at the mansion. They're hardly getting any sleep, and it's starting to become obvious. Lily is hardly able to keep her eyes open, and even finds Brad passed out in the gardens with his butt in the air. If only people knew that was the Crown Prince. What a sight. It's actually a lot harder for Brad because he has to go on regular night shifts as part of his job at the mansion, so he hardly gets any sleep at all. This is clearly not something they can keep up, so Lily suggests they shorten the opening hours of their chicken shop. Obviously, it will affect how much money they can make, but what's the alternative? If they're always this tired, someone might get hurt. Well, that was the original thought anyway. Soon, they begin to close the shop whenever they get too tired and start being far too relaxed with their business hours. It doesn't take long for the shop to empty out completely. There go all those loyal customers. And as soon as their fan base decreases, guess who returns to rub it in their faces? It's the grumpy old lady merchant, Miss Anu. She comes storming in, yelling at them for being bad merchants and only opening the shop when they wanted to. I don't know why this is any of her business, but clearly she takes the running of the market as a matter of pride. And any shop that has been so neglected that it starts gathering dust is simply not good enough. I mean, she's not wrong, is she? Her temper flares so hot that she reminds them of a Gordon Ramsay type, screaming at an underprepared chef. Lily and Brad apologize, but she tells them it's the customers who have really been affected. So from now on, they have to get it together. But who knows if they can even chase back all the regulars they lost? And if they have to be open more often, how are they going to manage their jobs at the mansion? It seems impossible. For some reason, Lily and Brad are actually pretty motivated by an old lady screaming at them. Apparently, it reminds them of their mothers, and suddenly they want to go home even more than before. Weird logic, but whatever works, I guess. Lily decides to set out a timetable so that they are only operating a few days a week. As long as it's consistent, it should be enough to keep the business afloat. And in case you're wondering, no, they do not want to hire part-time workers. They're very serious about keeping the recipe a secret and also saving money. Renewed with a new passion for work after their vicious beatdown from Miss Anu, Lily and Brad spend the rest of their shift cleaning up in preparation for the big reopening. Unfortunately, it isn't as straightforward as they hope to gain back the trust of their old customers. Business isn't bad, it's just not as good as before. They've lost momentum, which is everything for a young company. Damn, this video is starting to sound like a tutorial for young entrepreneurs. Isn't this a manhwa about romance and fantasy? These guys could not have gone further from the original plot if they tried. Lily suggests reviving Brad's Mukbang, but the old host seems to have hit his limit. It was kind of a weird concept after all. Add to the fact that it makes him twice as likely to be spotted by soldiers from the Empire, and it was kind of Brad's worst nightmare. So, no more mukbang. The evening takes a dark turn when the dream team receive a surprise visit from John, their chicken vendor. He runs into the restaurant in a huff, claiming that his chickens are all going to die. Oh good, just what they needed. More bad news. John is panicking, so it's kind of hard to tell what the problem is. But from what they can tell, some big black creature with lots of legs is going to eat all his chickens. He asks them to grab some weapons and follow him, so Brad picks up a chopping knife and gets moving. When they arrive at the farm, they find themselves seriously underprepared. The black creature he mentioned is actually a horrific monster from hell. There's no way untrained civilians can take on something like that and live. Sweet Brad just grabs his knife and dives straight in, getting covered with this gross, gooey web stuff. John is no help at all, so Lily tells him to go get help while she and Brad try to hold it off. But before he leaves, she demands he give them a discount on chicken in the future, or else they won't help. Atta girl, Lily! John has no choice but to agree, so he runs off into the night looking for help. Unfortunately, while she was trying to make a deal, Brad got completely wrapped up by the spider webs. He seems okay. He just can't move, fight, or do anything useful, really. Looks like this final boss battle is all on Lily, who has zero combat experience. Why did it have to be the guy with magical powers and sword skills who got stuck in a cocoon? Suddenly, the monster picks him up and seems to be about to try to eat him. When Brad realizes what's going on, he starts frantically jiggling inside the cocoon, asking Lily if she can cut him free. Bless her heart, she does have a go, but a minute or two later, it all goes quiet, and Brad realizes Lily has been trapped as well. At least it's not trying to eat them anymore. It seems to just be walking around with the giant cocoons on its back. Let's just hope Farmer John gets back quickly, or the chickens won't be the only loss tonight. While they're wrapped up, Lily asks Brad if he remembers anything about monsters from the original story. As usual, he's pretty much useless, because it turns out he stopped reading after part 1. Then everything gets twice as terrifying. Now the giant spider is trying to cut them up to make them easier to swallow. Brad, if there was ever a time to admit to having fire magic, it would be now, buddy. Finally, he decides to use his powers, conjuring a huge blue inferno to incinerate their bindings. In less than a minute, Lily is sitting on the ground, a little singed, but otherwise unharmed, wondering what the heck just happened. Brad admits the truth, and he's about to confess to being the main protagonist of the story too, until Lily interrupts him. Apparently, there are a few commoners with magical powers in the book, so she just assumes he's one of them. Brad is delighted that she doesn't realize that he's the male lead, and asks her to keep his powers a secret. She agrees, but of course, it's Lily, and her mind is never far from money. So she asks if in the future they can borrow the amplifier at a cheaper rate and just have Brad use his magic on it. Really, Lily? That's the thing you're focusing on right now? In the space where the monster was, a giant shell has appeared that's full of oil. Lily wants to use it to fry chicken, but Brad is skeptical, as anyone would be. Like, it just came out of a literal monster. That is not for cooking. But Brad realizes it might be a solution to their quest to get home and decides to dedicate himself to catching as many monsters as possible so that they can cut down on the cost of oil. These two. Seriously. Soon afterwards, half the town shows up with pitchforks expecting to find a monster. Instead, they find an empty shell since the chicken shop duo have already sneakily moved the oil back to their restaurant. Anu is at the front of the crowd and comes forward to inspect the shell. The crowd starts to get suspicious about how two ordinary civilians managed to kill a monster with nothing but a kitchen knife. But somehow, the pair managed to wriggle out of suspicion. As soon as their attention has turned, Lily seeks out John in the crowd, reminding him of the deal they made in the middle of the fight. She wants to renew their contracts right this second. Yes, literally right now. Meanwhile, Lady Evelyn is using a magic device to call her father. He wants her to come back home, or at least come visit, but Eve has no intention of leaving her lovely little mansion. In fact, she's even resorted to using a fake background to convince him she's still traveling. She thinks she's fooling everyone perfectly, but her dad is starting to get suspicious, and even Miller has some doubts. Evelyn did a complete 180 from the girl they all knew, and started doing things the original character would never have done. Things like drinking beer and asking for fried food. Of course, Miller has never heard of frying before, but once Evelyn mentions it, she runs to the mansion chef to ask if it could be made. Lucky for her, the chef is literally chowing down on some of Brad and Lily's fried chicken right that second. How convenient. The rumors of their shop have spread all the way through the kitchen staff, so the head chef thought she'd try some. She explains where she got it from, which means the dream team are due a visit from their head employer sometime soon. Uh-oh. Why do I feel like that won't go well? Miller returns to her lady with the food requested, admitting to Eve that someone in her own staff is selling the stuff. The lid is lifted to reveal a beautiful platter of fried chicken, which of course she recognizes from back home. Immediately, Eve demands the name of the staff members responsible, so Miller runs back to ask the chef. The moment she has left the room, she has another moment of doubt about her boss. It came as a big surprise that she requested fried food, let alone knew what it was. The old Evelyn wouldn't have known about fried chicken, nor would she have drank as much as the new one does. But really, what can Miller do about that? Even if these people are suspicious that she's nothing like the real Evelyn, it's not like they can swap her body out or anything, right? Right? It turns out that Evelyn's father has been having the same worries and contacted Miller a few hours ago when she went to get the chicken. The gem in her necktie was actually an emergency telephone line, which she can use to communicate with the Lord via hologram. See, how does this universe have holograms but not fried food? Doesn't make any sense to me. Eve's father confesses the same suspicions about his daughter acting unfamiliar. His first thought is that she must be ill, but Miller confirms that she's in perfect health. The butler says it's more like she's been possessed, which immediately gets the dad all worked up. He demands to know their location so that he can come and take his daughter to a temple, presumably to get rid of whatever demon or previous cancer patient might be lurking in her body. The noble lord is surprised to hear they're only just over in the neighboring country, but promises he'll be there as soon as he can, provided he can hand off his business to someone else, submit documents for travel, and handle all the paperwork. So it sounds like he might be a while. In the meantime, Miller is to continue reporting to him as often as possible, with the hope that after a quick visit to the temple, Evelyn will return to herself. Meanwhile, Lily has been working hard to earn back all the customers they lost, walking around town with the amplifier strapped to her head. After a massive one-time deal on chicken, they had a crazy busy evening and managed to regain some trust from their customers. After an exhausting and very intense shift at the chicken shop, they stumble back to the mansion on wobbly legs. They're only a little way from their beds when Miller appears like some sort of final boss in front of the door. She orders them to follow her and takes the pair straight up to Lady Evelyn's room, where she has her mask on as usual. She asks Miller to step outside so that they can talk frankly, which the butler seems to hate. When they're alone, Evelyn asks them one important question. Who created the Korean alphabet? For a moment, they don't respond, and it seems like she's a lunatic. Then Brad and Lily answer in sync, completely shocked. Eve asks them a load of other questions you could only know if you lived in our world, which for some reason includes singing the Baby Shark song. At the end of it, she gives them both a hug. Finally, after all this time, the reincarnated trio are united. Lily and Brad have just gained another bestie, but for Eve, this is the first time she's realized she's not alone. Immediately, she grabs a glass of beer to celebrate because apparently, she can't help herself. When the other two refuse, she realizes they must be younger than her. Brad and Lily admit that they were both still students when they died and sit down to explain to her how they've been planning to return to their own world. Eve is shocked to hear that's even possible, which is not strictly true. I mean, they haven't even found a sorcerer who can do it yet. But at least if the plan fails, they'll be rich for the rest of their fantasy lives. Evelyn is also surprised that they want to go back in the first place. I guess for the lady of the manor, things aren't so bad, especially when you remember that she couldn't even walk in her old life. Lily admits that her main motivation is period cramps, and as usual, Brad pretends he cares more about the internet than the secret truth of his identity. Speaking of which, why is he still keeping the secret? Since they all know they've been reincarnated, why don't they just open up and help each other out? Anyway, now that Eve is on their side, she offers to pitch in. The help of a noble lady with a massive fortune behind her could completely change the game. Maybe even cut their chicken shop days in half. She too decides to hide her true identity and just says that she's the daughter of a nobleman, not letting on who her father is. In her mind, she thinks it's better to help them get back to reality sooner rather than later. That way they will take her secret with them, no longer threatening her lovely existence of beer and fried chicken. Eve ducks outside to ask Miller how much money they have. Apparently, she is mega wealthy. She could give the chicken duo 10 million gold right now, which is all they need for the sorcerer. But then she'd be out of money, which means she'd have to go home for more, immediately. Obviously, that's not an option for Eve, so she heads back inside with a sheepish look and apologizes. She can't give them the money. After all, it is a huge amount. So I guess it's back to fried chicken they go. At least they've earned one more customer this time. The next day, Brad is taking a walk around the market when he bumps into Jed, another of the merchants. He tells Brad about the National Foundation Festival, an event for trade and exchange between Sarevia, their country, and the Empire. Empire is practically a trigger word for Brad, who nearly jumps out of his skin upon hearing it. He is surprised that there are things like festivals being held between the two nations, since technically they're supposed to be at war. Jed explains that both countries have very different geographical needs, and so it benefits both sides if they can still conduct trade and food supplies. And besides, the ceasefire has been going on for quite some time now. I mean, we haven't seen any signs of war in the whole series so far, so maybe it's not that serious? Jed is thinking of participating since it's a great opportunity to make a lot of money, especially for those working in food and produce. In front of Jed, Brad says, "Sure, maybe we'll go too." But the moment he's out of sight, he burns the pamphlet at once. He's such a scaredy cat, this guy. Just because it takes place in the Empire does not mean it isn't worth the risk. Anyway, sucks to be him, because Lily finds out about the festival anyway when Eve suggests it the next day at afternoon tea. but Lily doesn't really want to go either. Even if she wasn't born as a high and noble character, there are still people she wants to avoid. One of whom is her old boss, who proposed to her when she was still working as a maid. Wait, that's crazy! We didn't know that! Eve asks why she didn't end up dating him at least, and Lily admits the guy was 76 years old! Yikes! Creepy much? The story gets Evelyn on side, but the reason we haven't heard any of this before is because it's actually a lie. She just doesn't want to go back and run the risk of meeting anyone from the original story. Now it's Brad's turn to come up with a convoluted lie to explain why he doesn't want to visit the Empire. He starts running his mouth about some brother-in-law's third cousin's dog or something. Anyway, it's impossible to follow, but there's an excuse in there somewhere. Evelyn feels sorry for the two of them, but doesn't want to give up on the idea of the festival, so she suggests they go in disguise instead. Genius! Why didn't they think of that earlier? They really aren't convinced until Evelyn reminds them that it could literally take years to save up the money they need from just selling chicken. And that's not even mentioning how long it might take to find a sorcerer talented enough to send them through space and time. She doubles down and uses the fear factor of getting a disease, and of course, Lily's monster period pains force her to agree. Brad is still too scared of getting found, so she declares that she will simply go alone. Now, he would look like a Class A douche if he didn't come too, so of course, Brad is in as well. Only if he can wear a disguise, though. The day of their departure comes around quicker than expected. Evelyn has supplied Brad with a top-notch disguise. Yes, that's right. Brad is attending the festival as Bradette, a beautiful, noble lady from Cerivia. At least it will do the job, I guess. Evelyn dressed him herself, too, even down to the makeup and the wig. And he comes out looking pretty impressive for a big athlete with broad shoulders. Lily is cosplaying as a boy, too, though she's a little jealous when she sees Bradette. Honestly, I feel like he's pulling it off a little too well. Maybe if the chicken business falls through, they can set up a one-man drag show to earn some extra cash. Once they're both ready, Evelyn sends them on their way. Her excuse for not coming is motion sickness. I guess she's the best liar out of all of them. She wishes them well, telling them to make a lot of money before they can even think about coming back. Easy for her to say. She gets to sit back in her mansion and enjoy the luxury of nobility while they have to slave away in these absurd outfits and try not to get recognized. Even Miller is surprised that she doesn't want to join them at the festival. Although these days, it seems like Miller is always nagging her about something. She says her father was hoping she would attend for the sake of their family, to show face and be sociable. So Eve asks her to tell her dad she's sick, but not the normal kind, just hungover. In the future, as in, she plans to get super drunk that day and give all her staff a holiday, so she simply couldn't fit it in. Damn, I'm starting to envy this girl a bit. Meanwhile, the dynamic duo are already on the road, riding their carriage through the countryside. It's a long, old journey, and there's a chance they could be attacked by bandits. That's part of the reason Brad agreed to come, because Lily would be in serious danger if she went alone. She's glad Brad came for the sake of her protection, but Lily also seems kind of obsessed with his new look. She can't stop staring at him, making Brad very uncomfortable. He thinks she's kidding, but she genuinely thinks he's beautiful. And she's not wrong. Isn't he surprisingly soft and feminine in his getup? A few days later, they arrive in the Empire. At this point, Brad is exhausted. At every single checkpoint, he got hit on by strange men, and now he's all closed off and moody. Yeah? Well, now you know how it feels, Brad. But it's time for business now, so there's no point being down. Brad forces his energy levels back up, taking a look at the scenery in the market while Lily goes to register them both. Suddenly, a huge swarm of people rush past, headed somewhere very fast. Brad puts on his best lady voice to ask the girl next to him what all the fuss is about. Apparently, the first day of the festival always includes an opening address at the palace, so everyone is rushing to get a good spot. Brad is curious himself, since he ran away in the middle of the night on his very first day. He didn't really get a good look at the palace, so he decides to take a glimpse himself, far enough away that no one could spot him. Right, I'm sure that won't backfire at all. He grabs Lily and they head off together, following the crowds to the enormous palace complex. Brad is already acting weird, but luckily his rambling is cut off when the Prince Trabaut is announced. Out comes Adrian von Trabaut, a magnificent and very handsome lad who looks nothing like Brad. Supposedly, this is Brad's brother, the one he's been at odds with ever since he was little. The second he appears, the crowd drown out his words with screaming, so they can't really tell what he's saying. While watching the crowd, Lily suddenly remembers this scene from the book. In Season 1, the Imperial Festival is a spot where something major happens between the male and female leads that cause them to develop feelings for each other. But the prince who gave the speech was the second prince, who doesn't appear very much in the first season. His unexpected arrival clearly shows that something is off, and that the plot has changed in some way. But Lily doesn't care. She's just here to sell some fried chicken. While she's prepping their stall, Lily tries to remember a description of the crown prince, which is difficult since he wasn't on the front cover of the series. He was described as having dark hair and red eyes. Lily remembers all this while literally watching Brad, but still doesn't put two and two together. Honestly, at this point, I think she deserves some kind of an award for most oblivious character ever. Once the festival starts, business picks up quickly. Everything is going well until one guy starts yelling at Brad. He seems drunk and keeps asking for alcohol while Lily watches on, suddenly realizing what's happening. In the book, this situation is the catalyst for a war a whole year later. The prince saves Lily from getting in a fight with this guy and beats him up. During the commotion, his disguise slips and he is immediately recognized as the crown prince. Then the drunkard, who turns out to be an enemy soldier, reports back to his king that the crown prince attacked him, and a year later, they're at war. Talk about going from 0 to 100. Wait, but that means this is a really dangerous situation. Desperate to avoid a war, Lily shoves a piece of chicken in the guy's mouth to distract him. And believe it or not, it works. The guy buys 2 more bags of chicken and just walks off. Wow, who knew that all it took to end wars was a bag of fried chicken? Once the situation is resolved, they can go back to selling. Brad runs out to grab some flour in the middle of the shift, and when he doesn't come back, Lily wanders off to find him. Turns out the drunk guy found him again, pulled off his wig, and keeps asking for more fried chicken. He seems totally hammered, but apparently not so hammered that he can't recognize Brad as the crown prince. Oh no, all that effort and it still happened anyway? Luckily, he's just drunk enough to be kind of confused about it. He still thinks Brad is a lady despite the wig coming off, which is insane. Before he can think any more about it, Brad smacks him in the back of the neck, making him pass out and hopefully messing with his memory. No one heard the drunk man's revelation, except for Lily, who is now staring at Brad, totally shell-shocked. Brad tries to deny it, telling Lily she misheard and putting the wig back on, as if that's going to do him any good at this stage. He starts jabbering about how he really was just reincarnated as an extra, and how it'd be so silly to move to a neighboring country as a homeless man if he'd started as an imperial prince. Yeah, it was silly, Brad. Out of everyone, I really don't understand why you, of all people, ignored the plot. For once, Lily doesn't believe his story, because she knows that man is the soldier from the book who appears in the novel specifically to reveal the crown prince and take off his disguise. Since that's exactly what happened, how could she doubt it? Brad didn't read that far in the novel, so Lily explains it to him, and after that, Brad literally yells out loud, "Oh right, the war! That's why I ran away from the palace in the first place!" Brilliant. Well, there's no point pretending after that. He admits his true identity, which is kind of funny while wearing a wig and an apron. Lily realizes that everything has started moving according to the original plot, so she decides they should get moving. They're about to close up the stall and get moving when Lily is recognized by a random lady named Sharon. She was the female's lead's roommate and mentions her real name in front of Brad, who finally realizes her true identity. Oh, thank God. I don't know about you guys, but it's been so frustrating having everyone hiding their characters from each other. Sharon is still hanging around like a persistent fly and butts in the middle of their conversation. Lily introduces Brad as a friend from work and tries to play off their discussion of the plot as an exchange between 2 book lovers. The roommate seems a little suspicious, but lets him get away with it and bids them goodbye. Just as she's turning to leave, Brad asks her a question. Since she works at the Imperial Palace, he asks if she has ever seen the Crown Prince's face, which seems like a really stupid thing to ask if you're trying to hide your identity, but whatever. Sharon has only seen portraits since ordinary workers never bump into the Imperial family in person. Brad is relieved to hear this and asks one final, very crucial question. What is the name of the Crown Prince? Since he couldn't remember it himself, he is delighted to find out that his character's name is Chase. I feel like Lily could have told him that, but at least he knows now. Sharon heads home and Brad immediately rounds on his partner. After all, if they hadn't randomly bumped into her, Lily probably wouldn't have told him that she was the female lead. Lily claims she was going to tell him at some point, which is absolutely not true. They both get pretty worked up. It's sinking in that they've been lying to each other all these months. Lily asks if they can just forget about it for now and focus on their main plan to go home. But Brad is way pettier than he seems and refuses to let it go. Even though he's still angry, he silently helps her pack down the stall. Because if Brad is one thing, he's a gentleman. We'll stop here for today, guys. Yes, I know you want more. Don't forget to ask for the next part in the comment section. Thank you guys for watching and for your support. Please subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Till the next one.